Hi there. I am the
Hi,
CRM Ninja, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Igor Shvets. Welcome.
thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, especially as I know you're such good friends with Eric Sove.
Yes, he seems to be the world famous and everybody seems to love him.
I
I'm one of
actually
those
have,
people.
indeed. I've actually suggested that he actually does a comic stand-up show with him and John Levesque, because I think that the two of them together would be amazing.
I would pay the ticket to see that.
The question is, who's going to be the third act on it? We should really come up with ideas.
I'm voting for Deanne Taylor.
Oh, Dion. Oh boy, that's going to be good. Right, I'm going to
I can
register
just
a
see a
domain.
Canvas up project for that.
I'm going to register a domain, and then I'm going to put the three of them up to it. So, one thing I wanted to ask you was, I know that one of your interests is hiking, hence my background.
Yes.
And living in Canada, there are some incredible hikes I know there are to have. So, could you share with us how you got into hiking and what are some of the great hikes that you've done?
It's actually started from a military background.
Okay.
I used to be in the infantry, and this is how it's all started. So I was actually known to punish the new soldiers by thanking them for the long walks. And now I just punish my two kids. But you're right, in Canada, you have plenty of national parks. You can go in the forest, you can climb on the mountains. I actually like inclined terrain. I like to be able to go up to have a beautiful view and I don't know, have like a small alcoholic drink on top without anybody seeing, of course.
Of course, without anybody saying. So, have you done like night hikes to see dawn coming up?
Absolutely. No, I didn't try drones, but the night is fun. Okay, obviously I don't do it now because with my kids because they're 2 year old and 6 year old. So
A
going
little
at
young for
night,
it.
it's a little bit extreme, but I promise I will torture them soon. We'll go on a night hike.
Night hikes can be very fun. I remember doing a couple of those some years back. Admittedly, we had night vision equipment just to help us along a little bit.
No,
But
where's the fun in that? And the night vision
well,
equipment, it's 2D, right? So you actually have more chances to hit a tree with your face. Because in the
it
army, it
was
used to be a joke.
yes. It was some quite good night vision stuff, but it was only for a couple of places we needed. In general, we didn't. But just being out there in the middle of the country, away from light pollution, just seeing the star, the galaxy cluster, absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Which is in Canada, light pollution is just 10 minutes away from the city. And you have a couple of million of square kilometers without any light pollution. So we kind of spoiled like that in Canada.
So basically, people, if you're wanting to see the galaxy cluster, star cluster, just go to Canada because you've got lots of space to see it.
Exactly. 3 hours from Montreal, Mont Tremblant, beautiful scenery, amazing food, and no light pollution.
You don't happen to do guided hikes and tours in your spare time, do you?
No, but for my retirement, why not?
Good. I'm glad that we've settled on your retirement plan at this point.
So being MCT and a hiking guide, that actually sounds like an amazing plan for the retirement.
Wonderful. I look forward to hearing more about it for when I get out to your neck of Canada.
Anytime with a good French wine and a good Canadian beer,
Yep,
makes it
definitely.
much nicer.
So, from hikes to the oops factor, what do you have to share with us today?
The oops factor. What I have to share is the big philosophical thing that happened to us not so long ago. Thank God it did not end up in a catastrophe. But what I
Okay.
learned is we came very close to the catastrophe. When you
Ooh,
have to deliver something very, very fast without testing and putting it directly to life, even if the clients insisted that the way it should be done, you should actually take a step back and avoid it. Because when you deploy logic apps in production at 2 a.m., and they all integrate the different sources and speak to the different entities, and you don't have a proper data set to test it
why don't you have a proper data set?
because of the speed in which the project had to advance. So we will
Okay.
be connecting to the different client APIs, and they only live And because of the compliance issues, we cannot use this data that's not anonymized. So live environment had to be separated because of the HIPAA compliance.
Okay. So tell us a bit more about the project and how you managed to avoid absolute catastrophe.
Mostly experience and coffee.
Coffee, that's a good one.
And an experience and having people to do a second check of what you do, doing double check of a double check. So essentially the project started from the very, very small project before COVID. It was we helping American clients to distribute telehealth equipment. So we take care of the call center and logistics and shipping and the software integration part. So because of the HIPAA compliant, that is Azure SQL and Power Platform are natively HIPAA compliant. HIPAA is the certification that you need to have. The choice was obvious. We would use Power Platform and Azure SQL.
Okay.
So this was the choice was very clear what we're going to use, and we use it very, very heavily. As well as Logic Apps, it was decided for numerous reasons because you can have only certain subnets calling this Logic Apps.
Yes.
This is a little bit expensive, but something you can develop very quickly. So
it works and it's all possible within Azure.
Exactly. It's all possible. It works. It works beautifully. The setup was a breeze. It's the first time I have to do it. I always forget the name. It's integrated service environment, right? I believe that's, so this is how IT configured it. And our Logic Apps would run from the certain IP range. So this was a lifesaver for the people in production. So we use this to integrate it all, and we had to advance very quickly because of the many government entities wanted to avoid that the elderly patients go to the hospital. So we had to move fast, right? Because I don't want to sound dramatic. It's not a question of life and death, but it's a question of life and death, right? The more elderly people go to the hospital, well, the more chances of them being contaminated. So
and I think most people would understand that now.
Yes. So the pressure was from management to your own conscience, right? So we had to move fast. And so far, I think the success was there. We did not have any major issues. We use Power Automate very heavily, Logic Apps very heavily. I think pushed Power Platform to the max, as well as the integration with Azure SQL. But
so you did this in a proper development environment then?
What do you mean?
So I'm saying when you developed the solution, you did it within a development environment.
Oh yes, absolutely. We did the dev environment, but certain things, because of how fast things change, certain Logic Apps would only connect to live environment. So we would connect it to the live system, run a test with the live data, then delete what I would need. I would strongly recommend not to do that, but sometimes because of the time constraints and the pressure from the clients, you have no choice but to connect after business hours and do it. So this is big oops factor. We came close to the catastrophe, but we avoided because I guess
out of curiosity, when running things against live data in production for the first time, did you make sure to back up the production data beforehand, or that somebody had it backed up just in case something happened?
Absolutely, always.
Okay,
always. But that being said, the data that we connect it would be integration data, so we did not have nothing would get destroyed. It's only certain cases would populate with the wrong information and would be shipped to different patients, right? So the worst case scenario, you would run a SQL query against. You would run SQL queries against the common data service data and still find them and clean it before 7 a.m., right? So we always had the backup plan, but thank God we never had to use it.
Indeed, thank God. So how much coffee did you guys get through?
A lot, actually. I would say 7-8 cups for the night.
A person?
And one Red Bull.
This is on a per person basis?
Yes, per person, yes.
That's a lot of coffee.
But thank God this part is over and we can go back to only 4 coffees per day.
I was about to ask you, have you managed to reduce your intake
Yes,
because of it? Okay,
absolutely.
fine. So what we learned from that, as you said, just ideally you should avoid obviously doing things just in production, but obviously, as we know, the world moment is such that sometimes we really do need to rush out. So, in an ideal scenario, how would you have managed that to definitely avoid catastrophe?
To definitely have four environments: dev, test, beta, and always have your test data as close to life as humanly possible. And as your solution evolves, as your test data samples, especially when you have a lot of different integration with a lot of different systems. So that would be the weapon of choice.
I fully agree with that. But in this case, as you've said, you just weren't able to do that because things were just moving so rapidly. So it wasn't
Exactly.
possible to get the data into the shape that you actually
Exactly.
needed it.
Because sometimes it's complex, comes from different sources in a different formats, and it's not a luxury we had.
Understood. Understood. And as you said, you didn't go into catastrophe, so I'm assuming there weren't any data issues then in the fullness of the
No, no.
project.
Obviously, there were small issues, but we were able to correct before the call center would open, right? So
Got
again,
it.
using the logic apps to correct them, which is another things I found because you can very quickly develop logic apps to correct any data issues. So
Ah, what sort of data issues and what would the logic apps do?
let's say certain cases that's supposed to be populated weren't populated, so
Okay.
you just run the query against them, run the logic apps with the manual trigger, and they would update everything you need to update, and then just delete them. Obviously, you
Brilliant.
can do it with a Power Automate, but
Yes.
it
Well,
was it it was easier, and since you delete it right after anyways,
easier
it
to
was
do with the
easier.
logic app.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's some very, very valuable lessons. I mean, I know I've personally experienced, when we had to release a hotfix into production and there wasn't any, we had tested out in dev, but there was no chance for the proper ALM. So I was the one releasing it into production with two people behind me, one developer, one manager. Manager was technical as well. They were looking over both of my shoulders, double checking, triple checking every single thing I was doing. And all I can tell you is that I felt very relieved when it was in and working properly.
Actually, another thing I would probably have, again, if you have the budget and time for that, I found that what we developed recently has actually works very well. You would back up CRM data with Dynamics 365 data
Yep,
on to SQL using data export service. And
yep.
the way you configure your database, you configure them with SQL temporal table.
Okay.
So as the data gets updated, you have a built-in history to basically audit it from SQL,
Yes, that's very
which making cross-reference a breathe. So again, if you have the budget of luxury of budget and time to do it, I would recommend anybody to do this because this way you
that's
have two different you have common data service module on one side, you have SQL with a history table because like so far I could not find a proper way to query audit data in Dynamics. I know Kingsway Soft has something, but it's not perfect. So if you
it's quite difficult.
yes, you could do it with the Kingsway soft, right? There is a way, but if you configure a data export service on a temporal table, so far I was amazed on how simple and efficient the solution is. And it probably takes you half a day to put something together.
Amazing. I must go and take a look at that and talk to our tech team. They could be very
So
interested.
if you want, it's in my to-do list. I'll be writing an article on it. So
I look
I'll have
forward
a
to
blog
it.
article. So yes, so far been very happy with the results. So that would be a
Brilliant.
lesson to learn.
Well, let me know when it's out and I will share it.
Absolutely,
Brilliant.
my
No,
pleasure.
that's some definitely some very, very good tips and some very important tips for everybody out there. So thank you for sharing those.
My pleasure.
Now comes the point where I ask you to nominate somebody to appear on the Oops Factor and share an Oops moment of theirs. Who would you like to nominate?
Uh, I would like to nominate Deanne Taylor.
Deanne's already been
You'd
nominated,
already
I'm
been
afraid.
nominated. Okay.
Yes.
What about Raphael Potin?
He has not. right?
Okay, so I'll be happy to nominate him. He's a good friend of mine. He's a good friend of Eric. He's actually a good friend of Diane, and he's an expert on what he does, and he has a lot of interesting information to share.
Wonderful. I will reach out to him. Thank you for that nomination.
You're very welcome.
Viewers, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Oops Factor. Feel free to check out the rest of the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, take a look at the blog, and above all, have a great day.